Good morning, people of the internet. You're listening to Debi Radio 79.5 FM, a podcast where we discuss the movie Grosse Pointe Blank, 1 minute at a time. I'm Dev.
And I'm Hugh, and on today's show we will be looking at minute 43, which allows us to focus once more on the absolutely exquisite and wonderful Joan Cusack.
Before some stuff gets blown up. And joining us on today's show, we have John Strawn of the Super-candid podcast. Welcome back, John.
Yeah, happy to be here. It's always a pleasure to see Joan Cusack's face in any film.
Absolutely. I feel like this podcast allows us to expand on the Joan Cusack fan club. Everyone who comes on this is like, yeah.
Yeah, Joan Cusack, Minnie Driver, we love them.
We do.
It's universal rule for anyone on this podcast, it turns out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, Joan Cusack, very much a treat. Any film that she appears, no matter how small the role.
Yes.
So in this scene, Joan Cusack Marcella is talking to her arms supplier, if I'm understanding correctly.
Well, she puts Martin on hold in order to do that. Yeah.
Yes, I know she had the lengthy order, but it seems like only one part of it is the issue here, and it reminded me of when I order something off Amazon, one item out of the order mysteriously takes 6 weeks, while everything else arrives by the time I finish clicking OK.
Yeah, it does feel that way, right? Like, I mean, it is a hefty list. Like, I mean, this is a lot of rounds of ammunition.
Yes.
And it is hilarious watching her just get so very angry about this and then cut back to immediately talking about a soup recipe. And just like her context switching in this is phenomenal.
It is cool.
Yes, the ramping up the anger from like the starting off very businesslike. Just the order has been submitted. If this was happening today, she'd be talking about a tracking number or some other thing like that didn't exist in the 1990s.
Yeah, you'd have maybe an order number, order ID, or whatever, and that's it, right? Like,
right? I can see it's been sitting in the warehouse for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yes.
So funny. But also it's the contrast, isn't it? It's that lovely thing about talking to Martin a certain way and then realizing that she's restraining herself because it's Martin and he could kill her.
Yes.
And then she switches over and then unleashes it all.
And then switches back to her friend, like asking about soup recipe.
Yes.
Right? And the bleed over of that aggression of like, it's not going to be a boring soup.
Exactly. I mean, is everybody psychopathic in this film to a little bit? Maybe it's not just Martin. I don't know.
I mean, I think
yes.
Go for it.
It makes me wonder, like, because she was on the phone when Martin called, and how long has she been debating the boringness of this soup?
She's ahead of the curve when it comes to phones. It's like, walking around, talking to one person about one thing when she should be working, doing it all at the same time. You can see where we're going with this culture, right? It's just, she's on it.
Yeah, I mean, she's as Martin's PA, she is on her game, right? And I think that slight element of, tendency towards psychopathy is another indicator as to why it's Martin that she works for, right? Like she has the willingness to work in this field, and that shows.
Well, it comes back to that thing you and I were speculating about a while back about whether or not their characters knew each other or met through the military or something, or through the CIA. There seems to be that sort of pre-existing relationship,
Oh, that's a really good point. I never really distinguished between the the army and the government work, and I wonder if she was his handler in the CIA.
Well, that's what I keep thinking, right? She's kind of sort of handler-ish without being full on, or maybe this is the promotion to being the handler she always could be. It's like the Julia Stiles character in Born Identity, who is, ordinary person on the line kind of thing. She's the most junior in the station that gets attacked, but then she ramps up to being slightly more of a communicator, and the person in the earpiece,
Yeah.
Yeah, she reminds me of in the Bruce Willis film Red.
Yes.
His contact. I think it's is it Juliana Margulies who plays that?
No.
Recall.
It's oh crikey, what's her name? Mary. Oh God, brain. I can see the face. I love the comic book. I love the film.
But she's she's not necessarily a handler. She's like she was a human resources person.
That's it.
She's just an office admin.
That's it.
Because Marcella never seems like she would have ever been in charge in their relationship.
Good point.
But maybe somebody that he knew, or maybe she potentially could have been somebody who saw too much, and the forces that be wanted her eliminated, and he protected her in some way, because she definitely feels to me that she has a sense of obligation to work for him.
Yes.
Particularly in their interactions, she's deferential, but then here we see, in contrast, she's not a person to be trifled with. So, regardless of the fact that Martin's a professional killer, she is much more deferential than you would think. You would think that in their relationship, as friendly as they are, she would needle him a little bit more, push back on him a little bit more.
Yeah. Mary Louise Parker.
That I was just about to say, Mary Louise Parker.
Yes,
yeah. No, it's a classic character. I mean, you go all the way back to 3 Days of the Condor as well. I mean, this is a very kind of classic spy-fi role. But they've taken it to a whole other level by making it privatized and, managing a killer and all this kind of thing. It's very, very, very interesting indeed. I think you're spot on with all that.
Yes, much like we've been talking about with Grocer's plans for unionizing, there's the mundane aspects that still have to be done. Somebody has to put in the purchase orders for 3,000 rounds of subsonic. It doesn't just appear.
Absolutely.
I do feel like the movie denies us the scene of whatever Martin Blank's arsenal is. That scene where he would open up a cabinet or a room full of guns. And where does all this ammunition go? Does he have a storage locker somewhere? Is it just in the back of the office?
That slow motion sequence with the pounding instrumental music that's key to every Michael Bay movie.
Yes.
Yeah, there is something about all of that's nicked from John Woo to some degree anyway, isn't it? It's that bit. One of the things and even then you can go back even further to like Rambo First Blood Part 2, the Cosmatos does that wonderfully tightly edited thing of clunk, chick, clank, clunk, clunk.
Yes.
But there is a sort of history here of that kind of thing in Hollywood action movies of the kind of we never see the logistics, we only see the cool part. And actually, this stuff takes a lot of work behind the scenes. I remember the Rock Galati, the gunsmith for a number of films, but Navy SEALs and Hard Target. And on Hard Target, he said, you work on a John Woo film, you shoot way more ammunition than you do on a regular film. He says normally on an American film we go through 800 rounds or whatever, and that's it. We've already passed 8,000. And like whoa, but and you just think of all that coming in. So yeah, but I also love it. I love that idea you guys are suggesting. Where did they put it? Where does this get stored? They have a warehouse downtown or something.
Yes, it feels like one of the things I think it's good that the filmmakers restrain themselves is that this feels like it's setting up a gag later in the film, and it never really comes into play other than for the comedy of Marcella and showcasing Joan Cusack's comedic abilities.
Yeah,
but it seems like if you're going through a screenwriting 101 type analysis, this would be at the end of the film. He runs out of ammunition, or or the delivery person shows up at the burned out office, or some payoff to this gag.
Yeah, that would be quite funny, actually. There's a bit. I think there's a bit in the shootout at the end of A Better Tomorrow 2 where the three heroes are busy in the middle of arguably one of the best John Woo scenes ever, where they're inside a house full of Yakuza triad guys, and basically it's three guys against everybody, and it's just this one long, immense fight scene. And there's a point where Chow Yun-fat is in the lounge that has already become a bloodbath, and he's backed up against a wall that is but the window that is partially shattered, and he's running out, and suddenly, the guy who was helping them, who they said, no, you can't come with us because we don't want you to die, you're our best friend, suddenly sticks his gun through the window and says, take it, and he's like, hey, and then this guy just starts handing them ammunition, and I was like, okay, so this is how we solve the problem of running out of ammunition. Just to have somebody turn up with a bag full of stuff and go, there you go.
Yes.
And actually, that's the sort of gag we're talking about, isn't it? That kind of, it would be kind of funny if Marcella just kind of turned up at the end and it was like, oh, and by the way, here's the stuff you asked for.
Yeah.
Loot crate.
Yes.
Before it was a thing. Oh, dear. But yeah, it's an interesting, a very interesting minute like that. Also, she's at her most Scully-esque in terms of how they frame her with the red hair and the black and white top.
Yes.
And the thing. We've said in a previous episode about we're having a discussion about the Scullification of intelligent female characters in the 90s. Whenever they're trying to get across to you that someone's smart, the first thing they do is make her look like Dana Scully.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But Joan Cusack's outfits, I know he comments on it earlier and calls her Sergeant Pepper, but her outfits are one of the highlights of the film too.
Absolutely.
She I feel like she could double as an NFL referee in this particular.
Yes.
So, as we come towards the end of this minute, we return to the ultimate.
It's the return of Benny Urquidez.
Yeah, but just before that, we have to talk about one of the great video game moments in terms of the history of video games and cinema, which is
the invention of the Doom cabinet. Specific to this movie, or Doom 2, I should say.
Yeah,
Doom 2 cabinet.
But come on, guys, it would have been so nice to have had a Doom 2 cabinet.
Yeah,
it is a game that would have translated well to an arcade.
It's one of those rare things where you look at it and go, "There's an alternative universe where we had Doom on cabinets, man. Where was that?" But it is cool.
Probably had to amp up the difficulty, but
like a skilled player could definitely get through it without spending that many quarters.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I was looking this up the other week because my partner and I, she's a massive video gamer, we were talking about video games, and I believe because there's the whole business of what happened to the actual cabinet that was built for the film, and I believe it is in the hands of the person who built it for the film. I think it's. I don't think it's in the collector's hand. I'm just scrolling through now to see if I can find it. Cover art, repackaging.
I mean, it's a beautifully designed cabinet, right? Like all of the artwork and just it just looks fantastic.
It is absolutely gorgeous, and you just sort of think, it would be one of those props that you would want, right? Like if you were working on the film and you knew anything about games, that's the thing to have. And I know the fact that it prompts people in this era to still, like, people who don't know a lot about it will see the film and go, wait, was it ever the thing? And it's kind of cool like that. It would be.
I assume that someone on the production must have just been a huge fan of the Doom series in order to commission that specifically for the film.
I mean, I love that it's so fitting for the scene itself, and that he, the kid's playing it and is like got his Ace of Spades playing in his headphones. I wonder what other video game would have fit in that space. Like, assuming there has to be something that occupies the kid whilst everything's blowing up in the background, right? You got the headphones so that he's not paying attention. And it could have been something predictable like a porno mag or something, which I think would have potentially been an alternative.
Yeah.
But if we go with the arcade machine, I can't think of arcade machines that would fit in this time.
It's kind of the era of Mortal Kombat, right?
Right.
Like
right.
that would more like a fighting game seems to be if you had to pick like a real world game, something like that.
Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat,
something that it would have a similar level of cartoonish violence to pair with the scene.
But
there were a few on the rails shooters at the time, weren't there?
Yeah.
Something Trigger.
Chrono Trigger.
No, Chrono Trigger's an RPG.
Oh, okay. I know what I know what you mean. It's like because I played it. I should remember it, but anyway.
I think it was a couple years before this because it came out with the film, but the Terminator 2 shooting game had a little submachine gun very similar to what Benny Urquidez wields in this scene.
Yeah.
Which are the older game, which is far too old for this era. The Operation Wolf, I think, was called. Had a like an Uzi type controller.
Yeah.
I think the other part of it is I actually think that there is a joke in terms of given we're about to see a action movie cliche, the gunfight or the fight in the shop, right? This is like a thing at this point. But this time it's a gunfight rather than people just like punching each other or throwing things. I feel like that's the whole point. It's literally the video games are making us violent argument parodied as it happens. The kid is busy playing it and like doesn't realize that everyone else is going, what? I'm still digging around trying to find out.
It was Time Crisis.
Time Crisis.
That was
it. Yes. God, I love Time Crisis.
The original House of the Dead actually dropped in 96 or 97 as well. So either of those would have worked. But I also see that light gun games may not have been the best match for all of the action behind, because you stand further back, you got more periphery. It's a bit more dynamic, whereas him just standing mindlessly at the controls works a lot better.
I mean, according to the Doom World forum, there's no way that the setup of the controls on the cabinet would work anyway for Doom. So the entire thing really is just a movie prop for the sake of the gag. Oh look, he's playing Doom, shooting people, and oh look what's happening behind him. But yeah, that brings us on to the actual fight scene itself, which I guess talk about next episode.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. I think the only thing at the end of this before we get into the action is, we talked earlier about the hangout nature. Like, Martin is, literally just killing time. He's got his hands on his head. He's aimlessly picking up some gum. There's no point to him being here. I that was the first thing I thought when I went back and rewatched this. Is like, because he was just here earlier in the same day.
That's a really good point.
And I was trying to figure out, like, why did he go back?
Yeah, I never even consciously registered it until we were watching this minute by minute. But yeah, I mean, he goes from being stood across the street from the station to being back in this convenience store, clearly with nothing to do. Like, he's kind of holding his head in his hands and he's stretching and he's like just wandering around aimlessly. It's like, it's like high school kids going to the mall or something. It's like,
yes,
we've got nothing better to do, so we're going here. I've got nowhere to be, so I'm going where my home used to be, I guess.
Yeah, yes. I guess that's part of it, isn't it? The home where the home used to be.
And the way I originally thought that this might have been intended to be a continuation of his first visit, but the layout and the way that he's acting, it doesn't seem to match. He's he's kind of calmed down from his initial reaction to seeing the store. So I don't think it doesn't seem like it. It seems like there has to have been some passing of time between his initial visit. But yes, I'm very excited. At the very end, I think we just get the first couple rounds of this gun battle.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are. You're so spot on with this, John. This idea of why he's there. He's gone home, as you said, Dev, but
Yeah.
it's not home, is it? It's like the best he can do is like buy a drink, get some gum.
Yeah.
I keep wondering
But,
if he was expecting it. I keep wondering if he's doing this because it's a safe location to take on the jet. And then I'm like, actually, no, because he really, really doesn't expect it.
Yes.
He doesn't. No, he's on alert for something, but not for this.
Yeah.
Because he is keeping an eye on the entrance.
Yeah.
I do think that this is a victim of either editing or script rewrites, because it does very definitely feel like this was originally part of a sequence that happened in the first part of the Ultimate. And maybe that Ultimate sequence happens later on. I'm having trouble pulling up the fourth draft script that we have.
Yeah.
Yes, and he had just asked Marcella for information about the ghoul, as he calls him, but we never see him get that information. So maybe there was a sequence missing where he led him here, or he was being followed, or something along those lines.
Yeah,
possible.
Well, we'll have a look before the next episode and find out.
Alrighty.
Okay, so this was minute 43 of the Grosse Pointe Blank podcast, Debi Radio 79.5 FM, featuring your hosts, co-writers, and co-producers, Dev Soligar and Hugh David.
Today's guest was John Strawn of the Super-candid podcast. He's been joining us all week. Thank you so much, John. Where can folks find out more about you?
Well, as I've been hyping the Star Wars Minute Discord server, continue to hype that. I'm in there. My user handle at the moment is the real Michael Garibaldi, which is a deep reference to Babylon 5, and the
late great Jerry Doyle
political positions that Jerry Doyle took later in life. So you can find me there discussing all things Star Wars, and with a variety of memes and other humorous elements.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
You can find us on all good podcast players, as well as YouTube, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Spotify. We are at Debi Radio. That is DEBI Radio. And on our website, debiradio.com. Again, DEBI.
And finally, if you want to have a chat with us at the Facebook listeners group, come to Debi Radio 79.5 FM fan club. Once again, DEBI Radio.
Sure was clear that all of this was new. Concentrating hard like a little girl, smoking for the first time. It wasn't